How will the Maple Leafs address their goaltending this offseason? We'll answer that question and more with some Word Association Wednesday. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On at Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. There's actually a really interesting bet that's over on FanDuel. It's under the novelty tab, Dave. And the bet is, which UFA goalie will the Maple Leafs sign this upcoming season? I'm not going to ask you to look it up yet. Don't look it up yet, because I want to ask you who you think is at the top of that list. You look at the UFA goaltenders. You can look at the list of UFAs, I suppose, but don't look it up on FanDuel. Who you think has the shortest odds based off of FanDuel's odds to be part of this goaltending tandem next season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Curious if you can come up with a name.
All right, let me just quickly pull up the goaltenders.
I don't want to give you. I'll throw names at you. I'll give you like a multiple choice, and you can tell me who you think it is. Okay, Kaapo Kähkönen, Laurent Brossoit, Cam Talbot, Casey DeSmith, Ilya Samsonov, or Anthony Stolarz?
I'll go with Cam Talbot as one.
Okay.
I think he seems like a play for the top one, which makes my it makes me think not great things.
In what world is Cam Talbot the answer in net here?
Never. Definitely not.
I don't understand. Like, you're right. The answer, you are correct. He is the number one. Technically, he's not. Technically, none/trade acquisition has the shortest odds. But in terms of the goaltenders and the players, Cam Talbot has the shortest odds at plus 340 to be the UFA goalie that the Maple Leafs sign. I think if they do sign Cam Talbot, honestly,
I cry.
I hope he's the Martin Jones replacement, not the Ilya Samsonov replacement. Is basically what I'm getting at here. I think if they're going to settle up and shore up the goaltending position this offseason, Dave, it's got to be via trade, which is 2-1 odds according to FanDuel is the top odds percentage would make sense, because none of those names that I just said, Chris Drieger is another name, Alex Nedeljkovic is another name too that's on this list, but none of them to me are the answer. And I think it's got to be through the trade route to find the goalie partner for Joseph Woll next year. What do you think?
I agree that if you're going to go out and get a goalie, trading is going to be your best option. Because the only goalies that actually don't make me want to vomit when I say their names are Anthony Stolarz and Laurent Brossoit, but those are clear-cut backups, right?
Yes.
Those are guys that will play maybe 30 games max.
Yes,
but right, and they're actually pretty good backups. They're probably the best backups in the league when you look at how they did this year. But again, none of those names. You look at the Stanley Cup. We talked about this yesterday. You look at the conference finals right now. You got Bobrovsky, you got Shesterkin, you got Onger, and you got Skinner. Are 4 really good goaltenders, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting by with average goaltending in the playoffs. It just does. I know the Leafs have gone they've done pretty good with not having an elite goaltender. But I noticed the difference once they had Joseph Woll in net, and he just he brought his game to his game was at another level. He was going toe to toe with Jeremy Swayman. It made such a difference. that goaltending was kind of nulled in that when Woll was in net, and it just shows just how important it is to have that dependable elite goaltender. The problem is dependable. That's
Yeah.
the key part there. So I do think that the trade route, if you're gonna go for it, that's got to be the way to do it. It's also that even becomes tougher because trading for goalie can be I've seen it go one way or the other way. I've seen it go really well for teams, and I've also seen it tank a lot of teams, right? I think back to like
Yeah.
the Schneider trade to New Jersey, how that was touted as like that was a ninth overall.
Yeah, 9th overall pick turned into Bo Horvat. And I think it did work for a couple years, but the injuries obviously, ended up settling in there for Corey Schneider, and I think ended up with some really bad hip issues and just wasn't really able to play. So yeah, that didn't turn out well. Uh, obviously, I'm trying to think of like an example where things did turn out well in
I think
terms of
like the
like a trade,
Wild,
but
the Wild when they traded Talbot for Philip Gustafson, that worked well for Minnesota. It did not work well for Ottawa.
well, that is one of the names that kind of does get thrown in there when you talk about goaltenders who the Leafs could trade for. Philip Gustafson is one of those guys. There was a report a couple weeks ago. I think we touched on it. How Gustafson and for some reason Marco Rossi have been named and linked as possibly being on the blocked guys that the Wilds could be looking to deal this summer as they try to create cap space because they've got Suter and Parise's contracts on the books making up like I think it's like 14 million or something like that, which is those two contracts as dead cap. So they got to try and create some money elsewhere. And apparently, they might be willing to move on from Gustafson and roll with a Flurry and what was their Swedish prospect goaltender? Uh,
Wallstead.
Wallstat. Yeah, Jesper Wallstat. Or 1-2 punch in that, which could make Gustafson available. So that's one name. That's one name to kind of keep an eye on if we're talking about who they could potentially trade for and acquire to be part of a tandem or potentially be a 1A to Wolves 1B. I think Gustafson's a name that you could throw out there. I'm just looking up like the stats this year to see, all right, who was good that maybe could be available for the Maple Leafs. Like, I don't
I've
know.
heard Allmark's name.
Does Boston make a trade with Toronto? Like
They wanted to trade that guy as far away from Toronto as possible. They wanted to send him to LA, which I
right.
still think is where he goes ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Like in a vacuum, yes, Allmark would be a good goaltender to go out and get. I said that when he was a free agent to go. They should have went out and signed Allmark as a free agent goaltender. But I don't know if Boston will be willing to make that deal. So I'm not sure if that's even going to be an option for Toronto. Potentially, could you go and get one of those goaltenders out in Vegas, like Aiden Hill or Logan Thompson? Are either of them really like 1As though? Like I'm not so sure about that, to be honest with you either. Like there's just not really a lot that's out there. Like Jacob Markstrom's a bona fide goaltender, but is Calgary going to want to make trades with Toronto? It didn't look like it earlier in the season. And then the one guy that everyone kind of is hung up on as the flavor of the month right now is obviously UC Saros out in Nashville. And more smoke kind of coming out that they could be looking to move him. I was having a conversation with somebody over the weekend, and there was chatter that Anaheim or Nashville has been talking to some teams, and they're looking to clear out Saros pretty aggressively, and they're looking to bring in some other players. So apparently, the Leafs considered front runners. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening, but that's kind of the player that's at the top of the list of most. Out of most goaltenders, I would think there's not a whole lot else out there that seem attainable, at least for Toronto.
Not really, right? Like I'm just kind of looking at the list of like goaltenders. I heard somebody try to bring up Jordan Binnington's name. And I don't know if I understand the connection
I'd
with
be a big
Berube, but
fan. I'd love it.
It wouldn't be the worst idea because, again, I think St. Louis has just that team is not what it used to be. It's 3 years at a $6 million cap hit, which isn't the worst for a starting goaltender. And he picked up he. Some people thought he should have been given consideration for the Vezina with the way that season ended for him, right? He's usually pretty solid. He's pretty solid in the playoffs. Like, obviously the cup run aside, like I think the last time the Blues were in the playoffs, he was like stellar.
Yeah. Up
Just
until the injury, right? I think that was when Nazem Kadri went flying into him and kind of ended
I
his
think that
season, basically.
that was the year Colorado won the cup and they lost to St. Louis, lost to Colorado.
Yeah. Bennington threw a bottle of water at Kadri during the post-game interview. Yeah.
I remember that actually.
Hey man, like he's a nails kind of guy. He's kind of crazy, but like honestly, I'd be on board if that's a possibility. Yeah, they're always. I mean, you have to be to like legitimately sign up to stand in front of 100-mile-an-hour pucks for a living. He would be a guy I would be interested in though. Like if I were to do a power ranking at this moment for guys who I think not only are available but are maybe even possible. Like I don't see Markstrom and Allmark as possibilities just based on, the fact that I don't think Calgary wants to deal with tree living and I don't think Boston wants to deal with Toronto. So I don't know if Allmark and Markstrom are even possibilities for Toronto. But I think like Saros is probably at the top of my list. Bennington would be the next guy. And then you probably do get into like a Philip Gustafson kind of player as maybe the three top guys who Toronto could possibly go after this summer to kind of pair up with or take over the starting job, or at the very least pair up with Joseph Wall. But should be a fun summer to keep track of that. But I think goaltending is definitely something that Toronto is going to need to work on. Obviously, with Samsonov being UFA, unexpected to sign back in Toronto. Jones also a UFA as well. To this point, has not received a contract. I think he would hope to get a backup gig elsewhere, not be the number 3 here. So they're going to need to bring in a goalie of some capacity, whether it's one of the names on this list here over on FanDuel or it's via trade. They are going to have to make an addition between the nets, and we'll see. We'll see who that ends up being. Let's take a quick break. Let's come back. Let's play some word association Wednesday. I don't know. Have we done this on this podcast before? I know I used to do it on the lunch. I don't remember. No. So we're going to bring it to the pod, baby. And we'll kind of throw it in there periodically on a Wednesday. It's a fun little game. I'll explain it and tee it up on the other side. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props. Heck, if you have an inkling as to what the Maple Leafs are going to do between the pipes, we did just talk about a novelty prop bet that is available on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. We've got new episodes coming out each and every day, Monday through Friday. You can find them wherever you download your audio podcasts, and also you can find us up on YouTube. We would ask if you've enjoyed the content, you enjoy the show, and want that daily dosage of Maple Leafs content directly to you. We ask that you would please subscribe to the podcast. There's about roughly 45% listenership that don't subscribe to the show. So lots of people tuning in, but not subscribing. And we've got another giveaway at the 10,000 mark, 10K sub mark. So we got to get there, right? We're 5,500 or so. So we're not relatively, close yet per se, but it goes pretty fast at points. All right, Dave, one sec. I had to get a cop out there. All right, let's play some word association Wednesday. So the way that's going to work essentially is I'm going to throw out a player name, or perhaps it's a phrase of some kind, a team name. I'm going to throw out a phrase or word or whatever, and you got to tell me the first thing, the first word that comes to mind. Okay, so that's how it's played. So I'm going to start out. We'll start out Leaf centric. Locked on Leafs makes sense. I'm going to throw out the name Mitch Marner. What's the first word that pops into your head?
Playmaking.
Okay, explain.
I mean, we know Mitch Marner's bread and butter is his ability to make plays and give guys the puck and be a disher. That's his MO. So I know maybe some people are looking for like out of
Trade,
town
perhaps?
trade, right?
Coffee.
Yeah, coffee
I,
would have been a good one.
I thought of a great segment, and maybe we could do this throughout the summer, by the way. I thought of a great segment kind of stemming off of the Mitch Marner, Craig Berube coffee gate thing. We could do like a role playing segment, call it Craig's Coffee Corner, where like one of us play Berube, one of us play a player, whether it's Marner or Matthews, don't whatever. And we do like a role playing discussion of some kind. I think it's got some legs. We could work on it, but it was something that popped into my mind. I'm a fan of alliteration, so I thought Craig's Coffee Corner got to come up with some sort of segment that has to do with that little meme. So that's a working it's a work in progress. By the way, we'll do it at some point throughout the summer. All right, so Mitch Marner, you've got playmaking, so you're going quite literal
Yep.
on that one, instead of
Coffee or trade.
yeah, instead of one of those more, sexier items that maybe the listenership or at least fan base
Oh,
maybe was anticipating. I'll give you. We'll keep it going because you've got a decent list here, so you have a chance to redeem yourself, perhaps, if you want to get there. Here's another name for you, Nick Robertson.
Nick Robertson.
Yep.
Little brother.
Yeah, I think that's the correct answer.
Or the other brother, even.
Yeah, other. We the other. We the other. Nick Robertson. It's I mean, it's hopefully Nick Robertson can like I don't know, channel a little bit of what his brother's doing because dude, Jason is a gamer. Like obviously he's luckier to be a bit of a bigger human. Like I think Jason's like 6'1", where Nick Robertson obviously a little bit smaller. So it is unfortunate that the older brother got the size. Um, and the goal scoring touch. Nick Robertson obviously still has a decent shot, but would love for him to hit those brother heights, but I just don't see it happening, Dave. I don't know.
I doubt it. Like we also know that like Nick Robertson has had his development cut short. I've always said part of my issue with Nick Robertson has been his skating, and he's not putting himself in the best positions usually. Right, as a goal scorer, you got to get yourself into good positions. You got to battle for pucks. Those are things I think he needs to work on. His brother does that so well. Gets himself in great scoring areas.
The word for me was going to be unfortunate. It's unfortunate that this guy could not stay healthy, and it really kind of derailed his career. Now, he did finally have his first fully healthy season of pro hockey this year, and, he actually played well when he got in. We'll see what happens next year with Nick Robertson, but completely new regime, right? He's not like he was a Dubas draft pick. Sheldon Keefe has been his coach his entire career. Like now he's got a different GM, different head coach. Nick Robertson is going to be a player to watch this summer. Could there be value elsewhere? Could a team have interest in him? And could they look to maybe see if he could be one of those change of scenery players since there's not much ties left to him anymore? So he's kind of a player to watch for me this summer to see what ends up happening with him. All right, let's keep it going. Couple more here for you. Jake McCabe.
Rugged.
Warrior.
Yeah. Rugged warrior.
Dependable.
Yeah.
Those are like the string of words that definitely kind of come to mind when we think about Jake McCabe, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially this year. Last year's playoffs, not as much. This year's playoffs, definitely big turnaround for that guy.
Yeah. All right. Let's go around the league a little bit. I got a couple more names for you. And you could give me your word that you are associating with said player. Alexis Lafreniere.
Gamer.
Arrived.
Yeah.
He has arrived.
He's been the Rangers, like other than Shesterkin, he's probably been their second best player, especially in this series against Florida. Scored another one.
Yeah.
Scored another one. Had one go off the post in the second period. He's just awesome player. Like again, he was I always have to remind myself that the Leafs were inches away.
A bounce away. I mean, like that. There was. I mean, we could also use the word controversy when talking about Alexis Lafreniere and the draft lottery balls. They just so happened to like drop the Rangers one. Was it a little heavier? Is that why when it came in it knocked the Maple Leafs ball out? Is it because there's a little weight to it? Conspiracy.
I have to go back to the tape on that one to figure that out.
It is nice to see though that like Laffy is starting to live up to the billing of that superstar. You know, the first overall talent that he was picked to be, and you know he's playing really really well right now for the New York Rangers. So certainly love to see what's happening with him. Connor McDavid.
Oh, now there's a lot of words, but just
injury.
I want to hear yours. Luxury.
Injury.
Oh, injury.
No, injury. Is there something going on with McDavid? Like I keep hearing or people online saying it looks like McDavid might not be 100% right now.
I'm sure he's always dealing with something. That guy, like, how do you stop him? Right? That's like the biggest question always with McDavid. How do you stop him? And the question pretty much is hack him, whack him, do whatever you can to kind of slow him down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've seen the explosiveness, but not to the degree or not to the consistency that we saw early in the playoffs, right? So I'm sure there's always something, and he's never going to admit it. That's the other thing. He's never one to say, yeah, because I've been dealing with something nagging. He's not that type of player. So even if he was, he's so good at concealing it that we probably wouldn't even know if he was.
All right, I've got one more. Let's save it for the other side because it probably will turn into a bit of a longer discussion, I believe. So we'll do that on the other side. One more word association Wednesday coming up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti on a Wednesday. It's a hump day, and we're debuting a new segment that let us know down below if you're enjoying the segment. If so, we could bring it back periodically, especially throughout the offseason. It's called Word Association Wednesday. I'm throwing out player names, and we are coming up with the first word that comes to mind about said player. And I'm going to throw out one more. And you tell me the first word that comes to mind, okay? John Tavares.
Well, potentially not as rich as once thought.
Fraud? Fraud? Does the word fraud come to mind, Dave?
No.
Does the word fraud come to mind?
Not for him.
Tax evasion? Tax evasion, perhaps? What's going on here, Dave? You've got a little bit more. Yeah, you've got a little bit more. I'll set it up here. You've got a little bit more information on the situation here. But a couple of months ago, I remember there was a story about John Tavares and how the CRA, Canadian Revenue Agency, was basically telling Tavares that he owed more money back from when he signed in Toronto back in was it 2017, 18?
2018.
2018 in back taxes that he owed to the government. And basically, Tavares like, no, don't think that's the case. And they're going back and forth in court over this, apparently. And you've got a little bit of an update here. So I'll give you the reins and you can explain to, well, me as well, because I don't have as much information as you do about the whole situation. What the hell's going on with John Tavares and his battle with the Canadian government?
Yeah, so there was a court date on the 21st, and the CRA is basically arguing that the money that was paid to Tavares in signing bonuses does not actually constitute being a signing bonus, because there was a treaty signed years ago that basically states that it's a Canada-U.S. treaty, tax treaty, basically saying athletes, performers that are paid a signing bonus to come and perform or play in Canada, that signing bonus is taxed at 15%.
Okay.
I mean, every government's always looking to get something out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the CRA is alleging that Tavares's signing bonus, which was $15.25 million in 2018, and he made a salary of $650,000, does not constitute that bracket of a signing bonus, even though it was. Because basically they're saying is the signing bonus
go ahead.
The majority of that, I mean, that year, majority of what he was given was paid in the signing bonus. They're saying it wasn't paid as a consideration for him to come and sign and join Toronto. That's kind of how you get away with paying the full tax bracket, is that when you pay an athlete or anyone a signing bonus, it's kind of like an incentive for them to come to Canada.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
And John Tavares has been arguing this entire time that the structure of the contract was integral in his decision, and that's been integral for almost every single deal that the Leafs have signed the last few years, right? Like, you help the player out tax-wise by paying the signing bonus. You pay it up front. It helped with the pandemic because their salaries weren't impacted as much because it was a signing bonus. There's like a lot of reasons why the signing bonus was such. There's a reason why certain teams don't pay in the signing bonuses like the Leafs do. There's financial benefits to teams that can pay in signing bonuses. So
I think it's also the fact that most teams don't want to stroke $15 million check on one day specifically.
Exactly.
And it's more so that than it is like the tax repercussions. But anyways,
so to give an idea of how much money this is actually like costing Tavares, the CRA reassessed his taxes, saying he owed $6.8 million more than what he had claimed, plus $1.2 million in interest. So basically, there's an $8 million difference in what was assessed, then reassessed. And I don't know how many times I remember when I did my taxes this year, the government said, no, sorry, you owe more than what was originally assessed. I wasn't happy about it, but it's also not $8 million difference like John Tavares's.
Right.
Like, that's tough, right? And another issue is the CRA apparently claims that he maintained residential ties. This is a key part in all this as well, because in order for a player or athlete or entertainer to fall under that treaty, they can't be seen as a resident. They have to spend no more than 183 days in the country. And Tavares as well, I came to Toronto in September. Like, I didn't spend half a year or whatever that equates to. So that's the other key part too, is that he doesn't view himself as a resident during that period as well. It's so dumb. But it's
Well,
also it's dumb, but if in Tavares' case, I can understand why he's fighting it. This is it's $8 million.
well, here's where I'm confused.
Okay.
Why is this different from like anything else or anyone else?
I think part
Like,
of
did
it
Tavares just like screw up on his taxes and no one else made this mistake? Like, that's what, like, or are they
yeah.
picking on Tavares? Like, does he just have a terrible tax attorney? Like, why is
Yeah.
Tavares the only one where this is an issue? If obviously we know that there are multiple players who have signed big time contracts with the Maple Leafs that are primarily signing bonus laden.
Mhm.
So why is Tavares the only player that's is seemingly having an issue here? That's my question about this whole thing. So like is Tavares like do you have an answer for me? I guess before I kind of
Well,
break it down more,
well,
like
first off, KPMG is the firm that's representing him. It's the top accounting
mhm.
firm in the country. A
So is
lot of people know.
So like Tavares tried to get this tax loophole that maybe others don't try to get or haven't tried to get.
Well, I think what the issue with Tavares here is twofold. One, he lives in he's
He's a Canadian
Canadian,
citizen.
right?
So he definitely
So
spends more than 180 days a year here.
yeah, but it's just that 1 year, right? We're not like it's 2018 we're talking about, right?
But I'm pretty sure he lived here during the summers, didn't he? Like he's had a place up in Muskoka for years.
Yeah, but is that equal to 183 days from like let's not forget he's in New York, right? And
Right, but you think about the days that he's in Canada for
right.
like games, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's the day before, day after, travel, whatever it may be, plus the summer. And then when he moved to Canada from September all the way till, you
Mhm.
know, January 1, I guess, like it could very well be up in that range. Now, if he's fighting it, I'm sure they looked at the dates and I'm sure they know that it was not 180 days.
Mhm.
So I guess that probably is just like a moot argument. Um, in which case, then I'm curious, like what's going on here? Where again, it's just only JT that is having this issue,
Yeah.
and not
They're
anyone else in the country. Not only the Leafs,
no.
but like the
I,
Canucks, the Oilers. Like no one else in the country is having an issue here. So it's almost like, is it you trying to like do things that are a little shady that no one else is doing? Like
like
that's
but,
kind of where
but
my head's
it
going
goes
at
back to
now.
the
Like, I
original
don't know.
argument though of how can the CRA say that him getting the salary how much and he has gotten in salary bonus not induce into his decision to come like not integral in his
That's true.
decision to come to Canada. Like
That is true. But
that's
also, like, if it's a signing bonus, and where was his original place of residence at the time? Would have been New York, right?
it would have been New York. Yeah, because he would have been playing in the Islanders, right? So that's his main residence.
Yeah. So, like, again, like, it makes sense, obviously, that he's fighting this, but the question is, why is he getting tagged for it when I'm sure every other player who's ever been in a situation where you went from a US market to a Canadian market has filed taxes the exact same way?
I'm
Or is
just
he doing something else? Or did the government just randomly decide to like pick on him?
I
Like
mean
those are
there's
kind of the three outcomes, right?
right. Like I'm trying to think like he's also got like his deal was the richest one the Leafs have signed, right? Maybe even like any Canadian team, NHL team has signed, right? I think Mitch
Uh,
Marner's was like his wasn't like his. I'm looking right
I,
now. His signing bonuses was equal to 60 million. Tavares
I
is at 70 million in signing bonus.
signing bonuses, okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Yeah.
signing bonuses specifically. Like
But
I
I mean
think
like
that's a bit
1670, like I don't, is there really a is that gonna trigger like Revenue Canada doing something about I don't know.
something definitely. There's something definitely alerted.
There's
Like
something going on. There's
oh, for
gotta be
sure.
something going on where either It could be a misunderstanding
It could
from
also
Revenue
just be that
Canada.
I think the thing is that Tavares probably is when he did it, they did his taxes saying that the signing bonus should be at this because unlike Marner, he probably couldn't claim that because he does live in Canada. So maybe he
No,
just
I
like
get that, but there's
yeah.
also, like, tons of like, go look at Tyler Bertuzzi's signing bonus. I guarantee you he
Mhm.
signed one on July 2nd, and he was an American citizen going from America to Canada or whoever. Like, pick any
American
player who's gone
resident.
from you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
John Klingberg would have been in the exact same scenario a year ago, right? When he signed, not a Canadian resident, but going from American city to Canadian city. So, you don't even have to look at the guys who are currently there in Toronto. Just look at any player ever that's went from an American market
Mhm.
to a Canadian market. Because not a Toronto thing, it's a Canada revenue thing.
Yes.
So
This is not Toronto centric. This is a Canada
but it's
issue.
only Tavares that is having the issue. Something tells me that it's Tavares that's creating the issue because he's not the only player to have a signing bonus
Mhm.
ultimately and have a majority signing bonus
I
as
just
part of their
think I just think that he's claiming the 15 million that was deemed a signing bonus as a signing bonus, so it should be taxed at a lower rate. But the CRA is saying no, it's not a signing bonus.
I
It should
get
be
that.
taxed at a higher rate. I think
I get
that's really the argument there, and I think maybe no other. I just think it's
100%, but you would think that it's pretty black and white because you have
yeah.
literally dozens, if not you have ultimately thousands of examples
Yep.
of athletes in the US coming to Canada, whether it's, you know, basketball, baseball, hockey, actors, you said, whatever it is, there are thousands of examples of
Mhm.
people signing a signing bonus in the US and then moving to Canada. Why is Tavares the only one that is having an issue with things? That's my ultimate question. Hopefully, we get those answers. I understand the whole situation and what they're arguing, but I think there's got to be something else that we don't know yet that will come out during the court proceedings, which ultimately is why they're going to court and why we will have an answer, I suppose, as to who's in the right and who's in the wrong and what the whole situation is there with John Tavares. Um, anything else before we take off, or you Tavares
Man,
devs
talking
had it
tax.
out here?
I hate stupid taxes.
It's the worst. And, like self-employment's like this year is going to be terrible for me doing it this year because obviously the last couple anyways. Don't need to bore people with that one, but I agree. Taxes suck. Uh
Taxes, terrible.
Terrible, terrible taxes. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You could subscribe to the Locked On at Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms, including up on YouTube to receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on X at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back to another episode for you guys tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.